I'm Brittany. I'm actually, so I'm Associate General Counsel here at Cleveland City. And I had a baby 7 weeks ago. Thank you. And this is my second daughter. So I guess why I'm here is because it's my first baby, and I'm not assuming all of you are moms, but I'm just going to share from a space that we are familiar with birth. And so I had my first daughter 4 years ago. Her name's Kennedy. She's 4. And my best friend became a doula as I was going through pregnancy, and she moved away. So I like to call her my virtual doula. She just gave me tools on how to deal with my provider. If they say they can't do this, don't say, oh, I want this, or why can't you say, give me what will happen if you don't do it. So I had that baby. They started asking me about C-sections, and all I knew is I didn't want to have a C-section. And it's because my brain is not, I'm not a nurse, I am not in healthcare at all, but I just knew it cost more money. And I knew that it was major surgery, and so I wasn't into that. Long story short, for the first birth, I remember being an advocate. I'm an advocate for others, but I had to advocate for myself. So my doula wasn't in the room. I mean, my OBGYN wasn't in the room, and my OBGYN, the one on call was. And so it was cool because I remember her saying, we have to go out and we have to, we'll have a meeting about your C-section. She came back and checked me, and I was like, if I was a slave, this wouldn't even be an option. And I remember saying that, and I'm like, give me more time, give my body more time to work. And I just remember just saying that, like, if y'all are rushing me, give my body more time. She checked me, my baby came out in 5 minutes after me saying that.
Wow.
So I had this baby, and my biggest fear was never dying during childbirth. But now, because I have a daughter, it becomes my biggest fear is dying during childbirth. When you have a kid and you're going into delivery, it's like, I cannot die during childbirth because I cannot leave my baby here without a mother. And so I'm going through this pregnancy, talk to my husband, like, if you have a choice between me and this baby, you know what to do, because I gotta be here for my baby, my 4-year-old. We get to the point where, hi Jasmine. Look, my friend is the CEO of Birth People immediately, and I'm still having complications. So we get to, I'm full term, my due date's coming, I'm a second time mom. They're like, if you feel pain, you come in. I wake up in the middle of the night, and I'm like, I never felt this pain before. Aside, if y'all are listening at home, I'm not a natural girl. I come full epidural. I go into the hospital prepared. My body is prepared for the drugs. Yes, my tolerance for pain is at a -1. So I've never felt this pain before. So I immediately got nervous and called my mom. I FaceTimed my mom. She started timing my contractions. She's like, well, these got to be rolling together. She's like, there's no way these are your contractions. And I'm like, Ma, I know. I'm like, why are they so close? She's like, you need to go to the hospital. I'm like, all right. I yelled down to my husband. My daughter just happened to be spending the night at my mom and dad's house. I grab the bag, throw some stuff in it, because I'm like, I'm not prepared. We get in the car. I wake up at 3 a.m. We get in the car. I live in Cleveland Heights. I'm going to Hillcrest. We start driving down Mayfield. I have never felt anything like this. I felt her head in my private area. And I'm like, look, I don't want to have this baby in this car. I see the police sitting in the YWCA, and I said, thank you, God, the police are here. So just being honest with you, I'm not talking about the 20% healthcare, I'm talking about the 80% of the system. When I see the police, because I'm an attorney who my entire career has worked with police, I worked for Shaker Police, I represented CMHA Police, and now I work for CSU Police. When I saw the police, I wasn't afraid, I was happy. The police pulled me over, my husband driving. I was like, good, they'll give us an escort. I'm in the middle of a contraction, screaming. He comes up to the car, and he's like, what is going on? And so I'm like, trying to get it out. I said, Hillcrest, I'm in labor. My husband is hands up. ID in the hand. I'm like so oblivious to what's going on. And I'm like, I guess I forgot that I was black. I forgot that he was a police officer. I forgot that my husband was a black man, because I look over like, what are you even doing? He's like nervous. And the police officer says, I was like, my due date was yesterday. And he's like, I just need to make sure. He's like, what are you saying? I said, I'm in labor. And he's like, where are you going? And I'm like, I'm going to, I was like, Hillcrest, hurry. And he's like, keep your hands out the window. So at this point, and this will make sense later, y'all, when I tell y'all I was in labor, my hands are out the window. And he's like, what's going on? I just need to make sure. I mean, I lift up my whole shirt. I just woke up out of bed. And you can see everything. He said, I'm not doubting that you're pregnant, but I just need to make sure you're not bullshitting me. That's what he said. He also yelled, I need more cars. So I see other cars pull up. I see other cars pull up, and now I'm in so much pain that I'm just like, I really don't want to have this baby right here. And I had never had a baby natural. So all the natural moms and natural women know, whatever I'm experiencing, nothing prepares you for that. So he says, well, do you want an ambulance? If you are familiar with the East Side, I'm past Brainerd at this point, coming down Mayfield. So it makes absolutely no sense for us to wait for an ambulance. A serious contraction comes, and I say, I need to open the door. I'm not sitting on my butt, so I'm holding onto the seat. I didn't know at the time that that's a sign that the baby's coming, because I can't sit down. So I'm like, I had no idea. The police officer says, do you want an ambulance? And I'm like, at this point, like, so then he looks at my husband and says, is she in labor? So my husband is like, what? Is she in labor? And my husband says, you see her, she's in labor. Then the officer says, well, if you don't want an ambulance, you can go to Hillcrest. I said, okay. So we're like, so can we drive off? He's like, yes. No, he doesn't say yes. He's like, I just want to make sure, like I said, are you in labor? Are you not bullshitting me? So we're having this exchange. And so then I say, I need to open up the door. I'm having a contraction. He said, you better not open up that door. Stay in the car and you keep your hands out the window. And he was like, go to Hillcrest for all I care. So he says, go to Hillcrest. Do y'all know, we drive to Hillcrest. This man follows us with no lights and no sirens. We get to Hillcrest. At this point, when I say I'm out of it, I'm on the emergency room floor. I don't know how far along I am. Like, the police officer pulls up. We can't go to the ramp because, like I said, now we got a police officer following us. I'm like, we're not doing this. Go to a well-lit area. I'm on the floor in the emergency room. The police officer comes up to my husband and says, do you understand why I pulled you over? My husband says, listen, I'm very frustrated because that's my wife. He says, oh, no, I'm just saying you weren't talking. He said, you asked me a question, I answered. I'm on the floor. The nurses take forever. Cleveland Clinic's police officers are so amazing. They come up to us. They tell my husband he needs to move his car. They do let him park in a doctor's parking spot. The last camera footage was from 3:45 a.m. I'm still on the floor in the emergency room in the hallway. My daughter was birthed at 4:18, so that shows you how much time that we had. When I got in, I was 10 centimeters dilated. And, a nurse, my daughter's name is Carter. My middle name is Nicole, and I was going to name her Carter Nicole. And an emergency room nurse was like, what's happening? And I was like, I'm here. So she said, sit in the wheelchair. And so I was like, okay. I tried to sit down and I couldn't. So I turned over. She says, you can't do that. My husband's not with me because he's got to move a car. So she's taking me to labor and delivery. And I look down on her badge and the badge says Nicole. And I'm like,
Absolutely not.
Give me some names because there's no way, even if it's my own name. So I remember she pushed me into labor and delivery, and I had a contraction coming. I got up, and she said, "You need to sit down. You're a hazard." And I was like, "Don't use that word with me. I'm not a hazard. I'm in labor." And I was like, "You can get out." I knew enough to know like I didn't have to have her care. When I got into labor and delivery, I was to Cleveland Clinic's like this is not even to Cleveland Clinic's defense. Whatever Cleveland Clinic is doing with the midwife program and hopefully being nurturing to doulas and the midwife system is so much more comforting. When I got into the room, those midwives were like, "You're fine. You need to leave the room." They were so supportive and affirming, and it was just, you don't realize like how hard it is to advocate for yourself, even when you advocate for your job, when you advocate at a high level every day. And what was so crazy to me is that I remember saying, and I was so mad at myself because to the police officer, I told him, "I'm an attorney. I represent this institution." And I was like, why did I have to say that? Like, why did I feel it necessary to even say that? And my friend said, "You were trying to normalize and make him see you as a human and as a person." And it was just like so frustrating when I got to the hospital to go through all of that and to like be affirmed that I was 10 centimeters dilated. And I wasn't, I was embarrassed. I was screaming to the top of my lungs, and I still was like, "I'm not moving forward without an epidural." And they were like, "You're 10 centimeters, but we can try it." Right. And the anesthesiologist came in. She's like, "If you can't sit down, I'm not going to be able to do it." And I said, "You're the only person standing between me and a pain-free delivery. Whatever you need me to do, I'm going to do it." Y'all, I stood up on the side of that bed. The midwife hugged me. I was like, "I got to push. I can't do it." She said, "You're going to do it." And I had my baby. And I just think about all of the factors, like if my husband's license plate had been expired, when he walked away from the car because I requested the body cam footage, because I knew to request body cam footage, the officer said on his way back to the car, "I'm going to follow them to the hospital to make sure they're not lying." Then he said in his car, "Hey, did his license plate even check out?" And I'm like, in the middle of this, you're still so concerned with the validity of my livelihood. So not only do you follow us to the hospital with no lights and sirens, no help,
Right.
you prolong this process, you didn't believe me, and it's like, you work really hard. And I know all of you are women who, because you're here, probably work in fields that are dominated by men, and specifically, white men. But you think like, I've done the work. I've worked very hard my entire life to reach this level where I demand, hopefully I can get some respect. But at that moment, and like the most vulnerable moment, it was like the police, even though I represent police, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. I was a black girl with a black man in a suburb at 3 a.m. in the morning. So, and could you imagine being excited to see the police, to be met with this? I was like, "I'm in labor." My husband's like, I was like, "They'll give us an escort." And he was like, my husband, I grew up in the suburbs. My husband is not from the suburbs. My husband was not excited at all. He's like, "All right."
Right.
So I say all that to say that when Jasmine is here, but we talk about how your socioeconomic status doesn't matter. The house I left from didn't matter. Like what I got going on, like economically. Yeah, and from a Christian perspective, me marrying this man and having that's not my baby daddy, like none of that mattered at all or matters at all. And I have a friend whose license is suspended and she's pregnant. And I told her after that, get your license taken care of.
Yeah.
And she's like, because if that was me and he would have made her get out the car, she would have had her baby on the sidewalk or in a jail cell because you just couldn't give me the benefit of the doubt. And then I think about, in the event that you were wrong, sir, a pregnant woman and a man whose license plate checked out, you let them go for speeding. That's the worst thing that could have happened this night. In a car that checked out, with a license plate that checked out, with a woman who was turned around screaming in a car. So even as a lawyer, you know, I've been in contact with like certain people that I love, and this is not about suing anybody or any of that, but it's just like, what do you do so this doesn't happen to somebody else? And then when you get to the hospital and you hear about how many white couples have escorts. And if I would have just made it to the city of Mayfield, potentially Mayfield, where the hospital is located, would have been more familiar because the city 1.1 miles away didn't understand that. We were less than 1 mile away from the number 2 hospital, you know what I'm saying? And the police around there couldn't give me the benefit of the doubt that I was in labor. So I'm thankful because my baby's alive and I'm alive. And in those 27 minutes, I was able to get into a room, and even though I didn't get my epidural, and I do not feel like a stronger woman because of it, I feel traumatized, and I still advocate for epidurals. But I just say there's something that has to happen, and it's not just with hospitals, and it's not just with providers, it is with this system. And it's like, I always say this to everybody who feels like, oh, but you made it. No, I did not. And no, we did not. Because women, and specifically Black women, are still dying. And it doesn't matter how many appointments you go to, because I went to every one, and how prepared you are, because I had my mommy bag and I have insurance. None of that mattered. None of that mattered. None of that mattered. And I was like, I got all of the degrees. And it didn't matter. And he didn't care at all about any of that. And I was still lying. So, yeah.
That's it. And I wanted to fuss at her, right? But I didn't fuss at her at all. I was like, I was through her pregnancy. I was like, why did y'all fucking do it? But then I was like, even in this situation, as I told her, I'm like, this is one of those things that nothing could have prepared her. The racism that she experienced was like, she didn't even have no time to get to the hospital day, right? To have her baby. And so it's like, how do we educate? I want to sue, like I told you in my text message. But like, you know, what do we do? It's like, how do you make people see us as human beings? Because when I'm like saying to people, I get excited and smile. Oh, the police, oh, wonderful, they escorted you. No, baby, they harassed them and made her experience that.
Wow. Okay. You're welcome. So yeah, she's alive now, and I'm thankful for that. But we just have to move forward. And these spaces have to understand that, like, this is real and it's systematic. Yes, for sure. And congratulations.
Thank you.